Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We were on a winter break hiatus, I guess you would say. This is the When We Were Kids, a Time Capsule Toys Podcast. I've changed up the formula now because we had such good responses to me and BJ just bullshitting. So now BJ is going to be the co-host on the show, and every randomly I'll sprinkle in someone. But for now, BJ's the new co-host, so thank you for actually agreeing to this. He agreed to it less than 24 hours ago. I work on very short notice. But make sure to check out Time Capsule Toys, as always. Monsters in the Toybox, and Toyhio returns February 8th. We got Harley Cameron, we got Julia Hart, and next week I should have an announcement about the next guest for the February Toyhio. Also, at the February Toyhio, I will also be announcing a in-store signing for March 16th. So, which is Steve Austin Day, and I'm pretty sure that's my banker who's just walking into the building right now.
You gonna get Steve Austin for Steve Austin Day?
Everyone asked me that.
I said it's probably a little pricey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just a little.
You gotta pay extra for snake arms.
Right.
That's the shirt I'll always remember. So, as it's being... Oh, I should probably put my phone on silent. So, for everyone that is always tuned in, we always talk about... It's always stuff from when we were kids. Stuff like that. So, it's been snowing everywhere like crazy. Mm-hmm. Do you have any classic sled riding stories?
Classic sled ride. So, I have ones not from when I was a kid. From more recently, I remember I was sled riding. This was my ex-wife's. This would have been, 20 years ago almost.
Okay.
And one of her nephews. I mean, we were sled riding on some hill, and like her nephews were just going up and down, flying, whatever. And then some poor little kid walked out right in front of my nephews as they were going down, and just got drilled. And his shoes went off, his hat went off, his gloves went off. It was like a comic book. I was crying, laughing, and I was like, "Oh, this kid's probably dead." But yeah, we had to go check out again. He was all right, but yeah, it was comical how all of his clothes fell off when he got hit by the sled.
Oh my god! Like all, I just imagine a kid face down like in his underwear.
He flipped like twice too. I mean, he got drilled.
That's funny you mentioned that because actually, this will be a story for my kids. Last year, I brought them to Packard Park to go sled riding because there's a huge hill right by the baseball fields. My one son, I call him No Listen because he doesn't listen to anyone or anything. It's so frustrating. My one son, Killian's coming down the hill. Fox is standing in the middle of the hill. I go, Fox, move. I'm screaming at him, just screaming, move. He's just standing there. Killian hits him. I thought he broke both of Fox's legs. Fox went up in the air and like fell on his head. And I was like, oh my God. And Fox was like, that was fun. I'm like, why wouldn't you move? He goes, I didn't know what you were saying. I'm like, no, you knew what I was saying. You just stared and you just weren't paying attention, as always.
There were a couple of times that, my brother and I almost crippled ourselves as kids going down where it's like you just barely missed a tree or just barely went through. Like, it's like, oh, that could have been really bad.
That's like the story I have about my childhood. So I grew up in Bezetta, and there was we had tons of woods behind us. Me and the neighbors, there was they weren't like crazy big hills, but there was hills in the back of the woods from like four-wheeler trails and bike trails and stuff like that. We would take our sleds back there. And on both sides of this one hill were briar bushes. Because that's the perfect spot for a freaking trail. We would go down the hill and we would try to push each other off into the briar bushes to see who would win. I don't know why we thought it was a good idea, but that's what we did. And that's what every time it snows, I think it's sled riding. That's what I always think of is me and his name is Jonathan. We'd push each other into the briar bushes and see who'd win. It was never successful. If you won, you still lost because then you had to help the other one out of the briar bushes.
I don't think I have any injury stories myself from sled riding. I know a lot of friends, whatever. It was always hilarious. You go like winter break and then you come back and there'd always be kids in casts because they broke an arm or whatever. Sled riding, like that happened often.
The one kid in Killian's class last year had both of his arms broken. I'm like, how does he wipe his ass.
Yeah,
Like, how does he do anything?
Right.
He's just walking around like this. I'm like, oh my god, freaking. But another sled riding. It's a sled riding story, but not a sled riding story. Jackass first came out. I was in my early 20s. I'm 43 now. We wanted to go sled riding, but summer. We took a wagon to Mosquito Creek, right by the dam where there's that big old hill. And we were riding the wagon down the hill. People were just watching us. And like we would turn at the end and like it would like drift or we just fall over or whatever. My one buddy Josh flew down this hill. He had his feet down to help him stop. He couldn't stop. He went through the fence. Like it was a chain link fence. He went through it. And I'll never forget. We had it on tape. It clipped under his jaw and he flipped out of the wagon onto all these pointed ass rocks. And we had to turn the camera off, run over and check on him. And then we had to go back to my parents' house because we're like, yeah, we had to go clean him up because he's all cut up. But that's like, so that's when we learned like don't sled ride in a wagon, basically down a hill.
I remember when we were kids, we almost got killed by a goat. So there was, our neighbors had a goat for some reason, right? So they had this goat that would like, our Hilljack neighbors across the street, and I think they're still there, actually. But like, they had this goat, right? And so the goat would come around, and it would like, he would eat the grass or he'd do whatever. But so the one day we're throwing rotten tomatoes out of our neighbor's garden at the goat, and I pegged the goat right in the ass with the rotten tomato, and it turned and started running at me. So I just remember screaming. I was like 5 years old, screaming and hauling off all the way back to my house, thinking this goat was about to kill me.
How old were you?
5, maybe.
5. Okay, because I had to have been probably around 5, 6. I had a 4-wheeler. My parents bought me, so I had to ride around all the time. My aunt and uncle lived next door to us. They had a goat. It was named Heidi. That was the meanest damn thing ever. I'd always fly around it because they couldn't catch me because I'm on my 4-wheeler. So I'd like do fishtails in front of it and like speed away from it as it chased me because it was on a rope. And whenever they would go out of town, my mom would have to go over there and feed it. And the one time I almost broke her wrist because it got in between her horns because that thing was so mean. It was only like nice to my aunt. I don't know whatever happened to it, but Heidi,
goats are mean.
Heidi was rude,
especially if you peg them with rotten tomatoes.
So with winter too, another thing too is people always have their like go-to things in the winter of what to do inside of a warm house. And usually when you were a kid, it was always board games. Was there any board games you wanted as a kid, but like your parents were like, yeah, that's too much money, we're going to get you this instead, got you a different board game? Or is there any board games you could think of as a kid that you just loved playing?
There weren't ones necessarily that I wanted. I remember there was a Ghostbusters board game, a real Ghostbusters one that I played all the time.
I didn't even know that.
All the time. I loved that one. And yeah, that's something else stupid I gotta go buy now. Now that you made me think of it. But yeah, there was a Ghostbusters.
Was it like a 3D one, or was it just like a board game?
It was a board, like the graphics that I remember were really cool. The box was really cool, and like, but yeah, it was like you hunted ghosts and stuff, whatever you rolled and did depending on what you did. But yeah, I remember playing that one as a kid. It was really, really cool. We didn't get through my brother and I never got through Monopoly. We'd always end up fighting.
The only way to get through Monopoly is to play it on Nintendo.
And I remember hating Operation because I hated the stupid. I just was like, what is this? Like, this is awful. Like, I hated that stupid game.
That was a game I wanted. My parents just never bought me.
Yeah, we had that one. I think eventually somebody sat on it. We also had one of those terrible. And I've seen it. I don't know if you follow Super 70 Sports on Twitter. Like, he tweets this stuff out, and he mentioned this board game, but it was like an NBA basketball game, and it was this little ping pong ball that rolled around on this. So it was like, it was just a piece of cardboard basically, but it folded up, and there was hoops on the side, and it would get on the thing, and you like pull a little spring back, and it would fling the ball. Like, I remember my brother and I playing that for a long time, but eventually, again, somebody sat on it, and that was the end of the court, and it was all warped.
I had something almost like that. It was like a dome. It was probably about this big, and each end had a basketball hoop, and there's like little spots where it had like launchers, and you would hit. That's what I had. So basically, it was so you couldn't freaking lose the ball or any of that. I don't even know who made it. I don't even know what it was even called. I just remember I had it. And I thought it was like the greatest thing ever.
It was similar to that. I think the one I played was NBA Papa Shot, maybe it was called, or it was called. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, it's.
I don't know why I thought you were going to say NBA Papa Shango. That's what popped in my head was Papa Shango.
We're not going wrestling yet, I don't think.
No, not yet. Speaking of wrestling, they even had board games, which were just. All they were like trivia games. I'm like, who wants to play wrestling trivia when you're a kid?
Yeah, I don't think I had. I never had a wrestling board game. I don't think I've ever seen a wrestling board game, but I don't doubt
they
it exists.
They had the WrestleMania VHS game, where you had to use the tape along with the board game because that was a huge thing back then. Like my sister used to play with my aunt's neighbors all the time. It was called Nightmare, and it was like a spooky board game. But they don't. Then they went off to doing things like Seen It.
Yeah, I remember all those with the DVDs.
And then that was it. Yeah. That was it. So, no, some of the board games, like I had to write down certain ones that either A, right now are worth a crap ton of money, and B, every kid wanted but never got because even back then they were like $30, $40 board games. I wrote down two because these are the two that stick out in my head the most. Hero Quest.
I don't remember that one at all.
It's a fantasy game. It was like a $400, $500 board game just a couple years ago, but they re-released it, so the price plummeted.
Yeah,
but the problem is it's smaller now, so it's not as big. And then the other one I wrote down was Dark Tower.
I don't remember Dark Tower either,
which is still stupid expensive. We just had people calling the shop for it a week before Christmas. Oh, do you have Dark Tower? I'm like, no, we've never had Dark Tower. Like, oh, someone I know wants it for Christmas. I'm like, that's like $400. Like, oh, well, I don't want to spend that. Well, then you ain't getting Dark Tower.
We had all the usual ones. I think that just about everybody had. We had Risk. We had Sorry. We had Guess Who.
That's what's on here. Yeah. I wrote Game Stuck Playing. Yeah, like, Guess Who.
Yeah, Guess Who was like, and that was in the month. I mean, none of the. I remember
and just so you know, there's a cheaper version of Guess Who, which I found out called Who Is It? And let me tell you, if you have a guy named Sam on one card and a person named Sam on the other card, the color of their skin is totally different. Like one will have like a darker shade of glasses than the other one, or a different colored shirt. So like you technically can't even win because if you say, "Is your shirt red?" and the person says no, then you look at it and go, "Why is your Sam's shirt pink and mine's red?" That's like how it was.
There was Guess Who. I remember playing Battleship a lot.
I loved Battleship.
I like Battleship a little bit. We played a lot of board games. We had a lot of them. I don't remember my brother and I. We didn't play we'd play them, but we'd get bored with them real fast. It was a couple times. There weren't. I'm trying to think if there was any ones that we actually like went back to like frequently. I don't really think that there was.
The other one I got stuck playing was Candyland.
Yeah, I remember Candyland.
Hated that game.
I remember Candyland and.
Shoots and ladders, which I wanted Shoots and Ladders. So of course, because I wanted it, that means we got Candyland. Because heaven forbid, my parents actually bought stuff.
Didn't they make one that was both? You flipped the board.
How if I know? They may have.
I thought Candyland and Shoots and Ladders was a package deal. Like I thought they, or maybe we bought one that you flipped it over and it was Shoots and Ladders in the back. I can't remember. I'll have to look that up.
But yeah, those are the games I got stuck playing. But I loved the hell out of Battleship. Battleship was so much fun. Me and my friends, even when we got older, we were playing Battleship. Except for I don't like talking Battleship or electronic Battleship, whatever it was called. I don't want it talking to me. It irked me so bad because the voice was awful.
I remember the voice. I don't think I had it, but I remember the voice. I know
but
what you're talking about.
The commercial for Battleship was awesome. That kid was like, I think you're Battleship. But that's another thing too, is like board game commercials were awesome. Like I was buying my kids board games for Christmas. This year I didn't get them one. Last year I bought them Boltenstein, which we played for like Christmas Day, and then they just got like bored of it. The one they still play to this day is Tornado Rex. I wanted it when I was a kid. That game is so much fun.
I don't remember that one either.
It came in 2 parts. The board was so big. It's like this really weird plastic. Did you ever play Fireball Island?
No.
Okay. That's another stupid, crazy, expensive game we'll talk about some other time. But they at one point, it was all during the 90s. They started making all their boards out of this, like, this plastic that you would see for, like, those 3D signs at like, video stores and stuff like that. Like, now coming to video cassette signs. They were all making them out of those. So this one came in 2 pieces. And there's Tornado Rex. You put him in a spinner. You put him up top.
Oh, I remember this game.
And he had trail down to where basically the only time you were safe basically is if you were in one of the caves. My kids are obsessed with that game. And we played it, no joke, on Christmas Day. It was 2 years ago. We played it for 4 hours. And it was fun every time. I just like laughed hysterically because like if you get hit by that thing, you go flying. But it's such a fun game. I actually bought that from my buddies at D&E Collectibles. They sold me that, and they sold me It for the Pit for a deal because I was buying it for my kids for Christmas, which are both like stupid expensive. Tornado Rex is like over $100, and so is It for the Pit.
Did you have Mousetrap?
No, I always wanted it. And anyone I have ever talked to about Mousetrap has complained because it takes too long to set up and doesn't work correctly.
It took a long time to set up, and then it like and again, inevitably there were way too many pieces to it, so you'd lose pieces or you'd step on a piece or break a piece, and then something wouldn't work, and then it didn't. You know what I mean? So like, I remember playing Mousetrap, but I do remember, we jumped ship on that real quick because it was like, now like something broke, and it was like this doesn't work. Like you can't catch the mouse anymore.
That commercial was awesome.
All the commercials for everything back then.
They
made
sold
it look
you.
awesome.
And when you get it, you're just like, this ain't like the commercial.
It was like. We talked about this, like the Tiger Electronic Games commercials was like, this looks like the most amazing thing ever. And you get it like, this is the biggest piece of crap. It would be like literally half a second of actual game footage and 29 and a half seconds of some kid like, all kinds of shit blowing up. Like,
God, it's just, yeah. I don't know. The commercials back then really sold you on stuff. Now commercials are just so weird and you don't even know what they're selling till the end when they show you the brand name.
There's a couple YouTube channels I subscribe to that just play nothing but 80s and 90s commercials, like whether it's Christmas commercials, toy commercials, like they'll do specific ones, but I'll just sit there and watch. It's like, oh my God, yeah. Like some of the stuff is like, what I wanted every toy in the world when I was a kid.
Yeah, that was the power of marketing. And that's why, like, they threw a big stink. This is a weird thing to bring up, but they threw a big stink back then about cigarette advertising because there's like, oh, you're making kids want to smoke. You think it's cool. I guess that's why the Flintstones were canceled. It's because Fred and Barney were featured in a smoking ad, and they canceled the Flintstones, which was the longest running cartoon series before the Simpsons.
I didn't know that.
Stupid knowledge I have in my head.
I didn't know that. Did they ever smoke on the show?
Nope.
No.
It was just in some printed advertisement, and parents were up in arms. Don't ask me why I had that stuck in my head, but I always remember that.
I'm trying to think if there were any other cartoons where any of the characters smoked. Was there anything that you could think of that were like I think X-Men, didn't Gambit smoke on X-Men? But there was like, but that was generally getting kind of an older crowd. Like as far as like kids stuff, I don't know if there was.
I always imagine someone having a cigarette hanging out of their mouth. But I can't remember exactly who it was.
I remember as a kid, I always thought Pigpen from Peanuts was on fire, but he was just a filthy bastard.
I know. Pigpen's on fire.
He's like, why is this kid so,
Oh, my God.
Geez,
I've never heard anyone say that.
What's wrong with
I thought he was on fire. He's walked around smoking all the time. Oh, my God. Who else? I can't even think of anyone saying, like, in a cartoon saying, I need a cigarette. But, like, there's certain, like, I'm sure it'll come to me eventually. But, like, that's like when I watched the Transformers movie. That's the first time I ever heard swearing in a cartoon. And I thought it was the craziest thing ever because I told my buddy Seth's mom about how they said the D word. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I think, who was it? Hot Rod when he opened it, or was it Ultra Magnus? And they had the Energon thing.
I don't remember. I haven't seen that.
Ah, damn it!
Since I was like, I probably haven't seen it since I was like 5 or 6 or way young whenever that came out. My brother was into Transformers. That was a little before me. Like he was into that, whatever. But I remember those were kind of gonzo by the time I could remember stuff. I was like, oh, I see them in the box. And I was like, what are these things?
You were a big video game person growing up, so I want to know what your snowy day video games were like. School, because back when we were kids, school was called off constantly because we had like 3 freaking feet of snow. Now we get school called off because there's a slight flurry.
Right. Yeah, they never seemed to cancel school. I went to Columbiana, and it was like we were always either the last or we ended up going, and it was like, yeah, you're right. Now it's like there was just a couple of the other day, and they closed everything.
The school that was canceled constantly. I think they were even canceled when.
I think I know who this is.
If it was sunny.
Can I take a guess?
Yes.
Beaver Local.
Yes.
They were closed first every time. Like Beaver Local's off. I was like,
it's like there's a raindrop. Beaver Local's closed. It's like, does Beaver Local not have anything?
Like, they had the greatest superintendent ever. Everybody was just jealous of Beaver Local because they were off they were just off constantly.
Oh God! So, what was your favorite Beaver Local video games?
So oh man, there was a ton. Like as far as like snowy day video games, I mean, obviously Gauntlet #1. I've said that that was one of my favorite games growing up. So I just played that forever. Gauntlet.
Lee Trevino's Fighting Golf, which I still don't understand.
Lee Trevino's Fighting Golf. I'm trying to think of games that like, I just would sit around and play like all day, like Snow Eyes. Like I played Super Sprint forever. Like that was the racing game.
Was that the
that was another 10-game black box game.
The Indian. What the heck am I talking about?
Black cartridge game.
Indy kart. Indy car. I can't talk today.
Little Indy cars.
Yes.
So that Super Sprint was one. I remember I got real into Faxanadu for a while too.
I never played that game.
That was a cool game. Like it was the way it was set. That was a really, really good. That's an underrated Nintendo game for sure. But yeah, I got real into that one for a while. I remember being like that on snowy days. There's a bunch. I remember playing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I remember sucking at it, but playing it.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, was one of my snowy day games. After I returned that like girl's sweatshirt or magic set or whatever the hell I got for Christmas that year.
That game was fun to play right from the rip. Where the first one was so hard that it was like
first one I didn't even get because I'm like I saw my friends playing. I go, who the hell wants to play this?
It was
too hard.
It was so hard, and then if you could get whatever. You get to the water level and you just break the controller because you're not getting through this. You know what I mean? It's
impossible. And it's like timed. It's like the 2 worst things ever.
It's the worst.
My 2 snowy day games were always DuckTales. I love that game. I still love that game. I can close my eyes and still hear the sound of Scrooge McDuck bouncing on his cane.
Yeah,
because that's how I got through like every level. It was just by bouncing on his cane. I used to play that game like crazy, and obviously Super Mario Bros. 3 because you couldn't ever leave. You couldn't pause. Like if you pause, someone was probably gonna turn it off. I'll never forget the one time my mom told us it was dinner time, so I paused it because it was the furthest I've ever gotten the game. Went to have dinner. I come back in, my Nintendo was off. I'm like, what happened? My cousin goes, oh, I turned it off because it was dinner time. I lost my mind. I'm like, no!
There were several games like that I remember leaving on overnight or leaving on for like days at a time with the Nintendo, which I'm sure was great for the Nintendo to be on for 3 days straight while you're in school, whatever. And I would just turn the TV off, and then you put the TV back on, and it would pick up where it was paused.
Like, that was our secret as a kid. No one would ever know that we left the Nintendo on because we turned the TV
just turn
off.
The TV off, right. Turn the TV off, and turn the TV back on, and then you could pick up where you left off. But yeah, the back of the Nintendo would be like fire. I can't believe the blood on this hasn't melted from the wall.
That's what happened years later with like PlayStations and Xbox had put out that fan and everything else. But there's a lot of. Did you ever play any of the actual snow games for Nintendo? Like crazy expensive one is Snow Brothers. I've never played it.
Never played. I didn't even heard of that one.
Yeah, they're like snowmen wearing like Super Mario and Luigi like jumpsuits, pretty much. Snow Brothers. I think there was Ski or Die or Snowboard or Die.
I never had that one. I'm trying to think if there was any snow games that took place in the snow.
There's only 2 that come to mind.
For some reason, I'm thinking of and this is not snow, obviously, but I'm thinking of stuff like TNC Surf Designs and that sort of stuff. Like if there was like a snow kind of version of that or something similar to that.
That label of that game, to me, will always stick out to me because that monkey with the flipped up hat.
Yeah.
And I always thought had to be like the greatest game ever. But I never heard anyone talk about it.
No, it was like, in theory, that game, it was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be like this great game, whatever. And then you play, you're like, it's all right. You know what I mean? Like you had the different levels, the different challenges you could do, the different stuff, whatever. But it was always just like, yeah, I'm not. And then I could never like catch the wave surfing. And I think you did it like one time, but you'd always wipe out every time. I'm like, I don't know. I was like fuck this.
That's how I feel about Skate or Die. Did you have any games that you remember very specifically that stick out in your mind of when you played sick from school and played hooky? Like, oh, I'm sick, I don't feel good. And then you're sitting there playing video games.
It would probably just be all the other ones I just sort of mentioned. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be just and a lot of it was just whatever we had too. Because like we get Nintendo games every once in a while, but like most of the time it was the bargain ones. Like the ones that were $40 was like no. It was we were always waiting for the ones that were mass produced and were $10, whatever, and we could get like two of them at a time. It was like, oh my god, or it was like $10-20. So we had a bunch of terrible video games. I remember playing Jordan versus Bird 1-on-1 a bunch. That game was awful.
I just sold one of those on my Whatnot. Follow me on Whatnot, Toyhio.
Yeah. What other? Oh god, there were so many god awful games that was like because it was like it was just in the bargain bin and we could get it. More will come to mind as we're talking here, I'm sure.
There's one that sticks out in my mind more than anything. I never owned it. I don't know how I even convinced my mom to take me to a video store when I was quote unquote sick that day because you had to go through hoops and everything else to play sick in my house because my parents did not want to watch you because they're like, it's school, you're going to school. Don't care, your leg could be dragging behind you. You're going to school. I'll never forget. I took the thermometer, held it under hot water, then put it in my mouth to convince my mom I was sick. She had to go to First Row Video in Cortland, which I think First Row Video now, I forget where it was at. It might have been where like the old Dairy Queen was, if memory serves me right. But anyways, we go there because she was either returning VHS tapes or renting new movies, and I was like, "Oh, can I please get this game? Can I please rent it? Please, please, please." She was like, "All right, fine." It was that Jackie Chan Nintendo game. It was so weird, and that is the only time I've ever seen it. 2 is the only time I ever played it. And like he had a giant, it was like almost like Bonk's Adventure, but Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, like, the one level of it was, like, you're on the side of, like, a mountain or something, and you have to, like, kick these guys off and crap. I'd love to have that game again.
Yeah, I never played Jackie Chan.
And at this point in time, I don't even know why he even had his own game. Like, it was just... He wasn't, like, super popular yet.
Yeah, I don't think he was until I was in high school, probably.
Yeah, like, the mid to late 90s, I think, is when he got, like, super popular in early 2000s. But that game just always stuck out in my head of how I will never understand how I convinced my mom to let me rent it.
Yeah, there were some. I'm trying to think of games that we just rented and didn't. I remember renting the Batman game and being like, "Oh, this is the greatest thing ever," but we never. It was always like $40 or $50, and it stayed that way for a long time because it was a good game. It was like, and by the time you could afford it, it's like, it's not. You're on another system or something by then. You know what I mean? What else did we rent? I always hated the games where you rented it and you just with no clue because. The instruction manual was gone for the first person that rented anything ever. Like, you know, I mean, there was never an instruction manual with anything, so you just got it, and you know, like, boy, I hope I know what I'm going to do here. And I remember there being several games was like you couldn't even figure out how to play because there was no instruction manual. That was being a Skate or Die. I used to rent Skate or Die all the time, thinking I was going to be able to do anything. I'm like, this game is terrible. You can't land a. All you can do is deal with that idiot at the counter. Yeah.
Like, I hated that game so much. But another game that just popped in my head that I loved as a kid, I try to track it down. I hate using eBay with a passion. So I've been trying to track that. I was trying to track this game down for years. I completely forgot all about it until just now. Princess Tomato.
Never had that one.
It is so, like, every character is a vegetable. Like, it's like a vegetable head on, like, a person body. It was called something like Princess Tomato and the Salad Kingdom. It was something like that. But it was such, I don't know what it was about. I don't remember anything about it other than I loved it. Another game another snowy game I used to play all the time. My cousins had it, and they'd bring it to my uncle's house, my aunt and uncle's house, so I could play it all the time too, which was an amazing game. And I honestly don't think they've ever put out another one, which I don't understand why or how, was Little Nemo's Adventure in Dreamland.
I remember that game, but I never played it. I remember what it was.
Oh my God, that game is so fun. Like, you'd feed the animals candy, and then you could ride on them. The game was a blast. I loved it. God, I want to play it now. I forgot all about it. Someone out there find me Princess Tomato.
Yeah, we had a lot of sports games. Obviously, we had all the Tecmo Bowls and Tecmo Baseball and Tecmo Basketball, and then the fighting golf.
I still will never understand why they called it fighting golf.
Fighting golf.
They should have had Andre Agassi's fighting tennis.
I don't think there was ever a good tennis game for. I could be wrong for Nintendo. I think they all sucked.
They all stunk. I don't think they came out with a good tennis game until they did like the Mario tennis stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think Dreamcast had a decent tennis game. It was like called like Tennis 2K or something like that.
Yeah, I do remember playing, like, trying to find a good tennis game on the emulator when I bought it, and it was like, oh boy, these are all terrible. I see why nobody had any of these.
I don't know why this just popped in my head. Cartoon series that weren't that popular. This is the most vague, weird thing ever. Cartoon series that weren't that popular, or they can be popular, that spawned a Nintendo game and or a board game. One came to mind because we're using it for the announcement for the next Toyhio guest. Swamp Thing. Cartoon ran 5 episodes. It had a board game and a Nintendo game.
Well,
the Nintendo game is like stupid expensive. The board game is like $30-$40. I never played it. But like,
well, they were ready for the merchandising, but probably should have waited to see if any kids wanted to actually watch the show first before they canceled it.
No joke. At Monsters of the Toy Box, we've sold more Swamp Thing figures than we have wrestling figures. I don't get it at all. It's like mind-boggling to me. But like the Swamp Thing, yeah, the video game, I never got to play it. The cartoon, Charlie, who works at Time Capsule, watched it the one day at the shop. He goes, I can't believe this only lasted 5 episodes. He goes, also, I can't believe that they just changed the lyrics from Wild Thing to Swamp Thing.
I never saw the cartoon.
It's on YouTube.
I just watched the movie not long ago. Wasn't Adrian Barbeau in the Swamp Thing movie?
The first one, yes. Heather Locklear was in the second one.
Okay, so I watched the first one, and it was the first time I'd seen it since I was like a little kid. But yeah, I was never into Swamp Thing. I was never. My brother and I were like, whatever. You know, it's like, what is this? What is this?
Now
deal,
that USA TV show they had with Rhonda Shear up all night was not very good.
No.
Then they redid Swamp Thing for that DC channel. That show was amazing. They canceled it after the first episode. I watched all 10 episodes, and they leave you with a giant ass cliffhanger. And I'm like, what is wrong with that show? Was so good. I hope they ain't bringing it back now. It's been like 5 freaking years, but I love Swamp Thing.
There's a lot of games. There were a lot of popular things that you asked this before. Like they didn't make toys out of certain stuff, and it's kind of mind-boggling they didn't make toys out of
like Back to the Future, like Clifton said.
Gauntlet's another one. Like I would have bought all those toys.
I don't
like, all 4 characters. You could have dungeons, all the enemies. Like that was like an endless thing.
That's the thing with Gauntlet. You are right. It could have been an endless thing. It could have been like literally like the next Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, for sure.
Which LJN had the rights to and made a ton of figures of. They made the PVC ones. Then they made the action figures. I never thought about why didn't they ever make Gauntlet toys. I still don't think we've ever got Gauntlet toys.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure some niche small companies probably made custom ones for somebody or whatever here or there. That I'm sure there's probably, but yeah, that was one I never understood why there weren't. But I think there were a lot of games like that where just didn't end up with a toy line or anything else. Where it was like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, Swamp Thing had merchandise before the cartoon even did anything. and
they were ready to go. And that was one other thing too. Like, a lot of people don't know this. I actually filmed for Comic Book Men, and the show got canceled before my episode ever aired.
Oh.
So on my episode, we talked about like movies that were like basically adult themed, but had cartoons and action figure lines, like Swamp Thing, Beetlejuice, and then like I said, Beetlejuice had a cartoon. Rambo, they put a cartoon, and Coleco did figures. Demolition Man was one I always bring up. I don't. To me, I will never understand that. Like, how did you put out toys for these movies, but you can't put out Gauntlet? You can't put out Back to the Future. You can't put out. I don't even know what else was going to come out. I had something else on the tip of my tongue. I forgot. Like, how'd you not make Home Alone figures? You only made that Kevin McAllister doll, the Talk Boy. Now they put out stuff, but like you could have put out a house play set with all the things.
All the characters.
For God's sake, you put out a board game,
right?
And the video game.
Oh yeah, those Home Alone games suck too. I remember that. I think that might have been a rental too. It was like, this is so awful, and we just stopped playing it. I think the video game nerd had Macaulay Culkin on there playing. There's a clip of him playing all the terrible Home because they did like 10 awful Home Alone games like for all the systems, and they were all just god awful terrible.
Yeah, I never thought about how they never made like now their NECA's doing them or whatever, but that don't count because you can't play with them because they'll break. They should have made a whole Home Alone thing. You could have had the van. You could have had Marv. You could have had Harry. Wasted.
Yeah, the whole family. I mean, the whole family. The house, like you said. Even the parents, Buzz. Like you could have had.
Yeah, you could have had so much stuff, but
and all the little trinkets.
I don't understand. Like, how do you? Where does their brain go with this stuff? Like, when you think of kids back in the day, toys, video games, why you're like, oh, board game? Yeah, people want a Home Alone board game. No, we don't. We can't swing a. That's what they should have did. Speaking of board games, take 13 Dead End Drive, morph that into the Home Alone game, because in 13 Dead End Drive, you had all those, like the falling chandelier, the knight that fell off the stand or whatever. You could have did that with Home Alone. So you could have the swinging paint can or the marbles or the blowtorch or whatever else. So these people need to hire me. I'm a marketing genius.
Didn't the Home Alone video game? Didn't you just like battle like vacuum cleaners and like didn't like a bunch of shit in the house try to kill you? It wasn't like you were going up against like the robbers. Like you think the robbers be trying to get you? I don't know.
It's like the Wayne's World. It's like the Wayne's World game where you have fight like guitars and like
that was bad.
Amps. Makes no sense.
That might have been a rental too. It was like, oh no, this is awful.
That's the other one. Like, why would you make a video game for Wayne's World? There's so many. We'll have to do an episode of just why did they make this?
Yeah.
The one thing I've written down too, which I want this to be a new portion of the show. I'm going to take two toy lines that are kind of similar, and I want to see which one you prefer and which one you would want to come back now.
Okay.
We're going back in time when everything had holograms. Because that was the big thing. That's the first one that popped in my head. Visionaries versus Supernaturals. Do you remember those?
I don't remember those, no.
All right, Visionaries were about the size, a little bit taller than G.I. Joes. They had emblems on their chests that were holograms. And then they had these... They're like the only figures that like, didn't have guns. They only had giant staffs that had bigger holograms on them. And then they had vehicles that had holograms on them. But they never made a playset, which is very weird. Then there were Supernaturals, which Supernaturals had the Ghostlings, which were little ghost guys that, like the one was called like Mr. Spooky. The other one was called like Spooky Cat or something stupid like that. But they had ghost slings, and their whole front of them was a hologram. So you turn them one way, it'd be a person. Turn another way, it would be something scary or whatever. Then they did like bigger figures that came with a part that you could pull off to see their face was a hologram, so it's their chest. They had like knights, Indians, a bunch of random stuff. They all came with a shield and a sword, except for the ghost slings only came with like a sword. They had a lion and a dragon as a vehicle. Then they had this one vehicle called the Ghost Bopper, or the Bat Bopper. And another vehicle, I forget what it's called. It was like, they were both like Jeeps. Then they had a playset called the Tomb of Doom, which I don't believe they actually had a hologram on it. So, because back then, you knew everything had holograms.
Oh, 100%. I remember all the comic books. Like, that just became a thing. Like, every other issue had a hologram cover. Look, it's a hologram cover. Let's slap a hologram on there.
So, out of these awful descriptions, which one do you think you would have played with more?
Which one didn't have the guns?
Visionaries.
So the opposite of that one.
Well, they had swords.
Yes, yeah.
Swords and shields. But like Visionaries they had vehicles. I don't think they had that many. They probably had like 2 or 3 vehicles, maybe. But their weapons were giant staffs. And like they were like so heavy most of the time the guys couldn't even hold them because the staffs were so top heavy. Like their arms would just flip over.
Well, that's why nobody liked Donatello and the Turtles, because he just had a big stick he walked around with. Like, nobody cared. Like, that's not a cool weapon.
So you look like my grandpa walking out to get the mail.
Everybody else had cool weapons. He just had a big stick.
Yeah, for me, like back then, I think I would want Visionaries. Now, I think Supernaturals look better because I first thought the box art. The box art sells me for everything. Visionaries is like so dark and like has this bright blue. Oh, and also Visionaries had helmets. Big whoop. But now it's like Supernatural. Supernaturals became like super hot all of a sudden. So like, I think if I was a kid, I would say Visionaries. Now as an adult, I'm saying Supernaturals. I think it'd be cool if they did Supernaturals because Supernaturals were also made by Tonka. I think Visionaries were made by Hasbro. I'm sure someone will chime in and tell me I'm wrong or if I'm right. But I know Supernaturals were done by Tonka. That was like Tonka's one and only action figure line, I think. Because I think after that, they just threw in the towel. They're like, we can't do this. Back to yellow dump trucks.
Just trucks. Yeah, stick with what works.
So you'd go with Supernaturals too? I think, honestly, if they would do it now, well, it didn't have a cartoon. Visionaries did have a cartoon. Supernaturals should have had a cartoon because the way it was.
What was it based off of?
Nothing. It was an idea. That's the thing with some of those toy lines. They're just like, we need something to compete. So they did Supernaturals. Like, no, back then, no one wanted the stupid things.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, they're picking up steam. So, but I wish someone would do a cartoon of them.
Are there a lot of toy lines that are based on nothing? They just made a toy line to make a toy line. There's got to be, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. Besides, that's the first I've heard of that. Like normally they base it off of like I said, a video game, a movie, a cartoon, just something.
Oh yeah, or
a comic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like Street Sharks. Everyone took the Ninja Turtles ball and ran with it. Oh, I thought of one. It had a toy line, but it also had a video game. Mutant League Football.
I remember Mutant League Football, but I'd never played it.
It had a toy line. Very, very, very limited toy line that obviously it went nowhere. And Creepy Crawlers had a action figure line. Those are, oh my God. And then another video game that spawned action figures. Now it's just like unraveling in my head. Zen, the Intergalactic Warrior.
So I remember that too, but I never had any of that. I never saw it, but yeah. I remember it, but I never watched it actually.
No cartoon, just a video game. And then they put out figures for it, and then they didn't sell because no one bought the video game.
Yeah,
like it was kind of like I don't know. The logic there is not the best. Like, we're going to put out this video game that's not very successful. We're going to let it ride with all these freaking action figures that aren't going to sell.
Did I see somebody just do toys based on, and this was a video game I had as a kid too. This was a bargain bin video game that had an amazing commercial for it. It was a hard as hell game for Abadox. Remember that game? Did they just do a toy line based on Abadox, or did somebody just come out with something? It might have been a custom. Somebody did something.
It had to have been a custom because...
Yeah, because like that was like one of those ones where it was like a minute. Like I remember the commercial, and it looked like the greatest thing ever. And you got it, and it was like, that's okay. There's a bunch of weird alien shit that you're battling and stuff in it, but it was hard as hell. You couldn't get past the second level. It was like, this is impossible. There's just so much crap coming at you at once. It was like, just side scroller shooter. That's all it was.
It had to have been a custom because I don't see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know was the guy's name. Abadox was the monster Abadox? I don't know what was Abadox.
I don't even remember.
I don't even remember what Abadox was. I'm sure it probably said the instruction manual, which everybody lost 5 minutes after they got the game.
Here, we'll talk about this too because I have it sitting here. Was there any toy when you were a kid that had like mystery or lore to it, like you never saw it?
Oh my God. Well, there were several wrestling figures I never saw. I've mentioned this before. Like several Hasbro figures you never saw anywhere ever. Like you never saw Andre the Giant. I never saw Bret Hart. Never saw Mr. Perfect. There was like so many of those. Like I was always looking for. It was like, wow. I think I told you I never saw Coco Beware. You gave me that figure. I never actually saw that anywhere in person.
Coco, like I said before, it's so weird. Like you rarely see American cards of it. It's always like French, and I will never understand why.
I'm trying to think if there were. Well, the Firehouse and Ghostbusters was lore because I never saw that outside of a catalog. I never actually saw it until I was an adult. I'm trying to think of if there was other toys in that Ghostbusters line that I never saw or like that I was looking for. I'm gonna have to think about this for a minute. Are there any for you?
I have one right here. This one is not. It's still toy lore, as I will call it. I have him in my case. I'm actually about to sell him. It's Wonder Bread He-Man. I've had him for about like 5-6 years now. And I'm just like, there's other stuff I'd rather want. So I'm like, I had him for long enough. I've had a couple of them, but this has been mine for like ever. Once again, bought it from D&E. The lore of this Wonder Bread He-Man is no one knows where he came from. The rumor has always been he was a mail away for Wonder Bread. Wonder Bread has came out stating they have no records of doing a mail away He-Man. You never find them sealed in a bag, anything. No one knows where they came from, but they're out there. And the whole lore of it is just like you could scour the internet for hours. You will find so many different things, but what makes him different, and another thing too, is people call him Savage He-Man. He has dark brown hair, black boots, black belt, dark brown loincloth. There's nothing different from him other than a color of his attire and his hair. And he's like crazy money. So like one way to tell if the paint on it's perfect, it probably ain't real. Because I was at a show once and a dude had a Wonder Bread He-Man and I was like, oh, can I see that? And I saw like underneath the paint wear on his head was like that blonde, and I'm like this ain't real. Like I don't want to tell the guy. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. Like, hey, your $1,500 figure is not real.
If somebody painted his head.
But like you could see on his head that it's like the same skin tone as his face.
Oh yeah.
That's what you actually want to look for wearing. If you look at his boots are the same skin tone as like his legs and stuff like that.
Right. So you know it's not.
And the whole thing too is people are like, oh, his accessories. He never came with accessories.
Yeah, where the hell did this guy come from then?
He never came with accessories. Those are all accessory pack accessories. So like this was like Zodak's chest armor, but they painted it black. And then like the maroon weapons, everyone's like, oh, those are his. No, they all came from accessory packs. So there's like so many questions still. No one can answer it. Wonder Bread can't even answer it. And like it's just so bizarre, and like he's just become like it's become like a life of its own in the like toy world. And there's so many people like passing off fakes and stuff like that. It's where Mattel actually started putting out Savage He-Man figures because of it. But like Mattel can't even tell you what the hell the origin is. Like no, it's just the most ridiculous thing ever.
How many of those things do you suspect are out there?
I don't even know.
And nobody knows where he came from, but he's going for big money, obviously. So there can't be a ton of them.
The first one, they're just uncommon. The first one I ever got was when we first opened up Time Capsule Toys. This guy kept hounding me about coming in early to buy his stuff. He was like, get there at 3:30. I'm like, we open at 4. Like, you can't wait a half hour? He's like, no, you have to get here. I get there early. He had an entire bed of his truck filled with stuff. And I'm going through all this stuff. It's like junk. And I come to the shoebox. I open the shoebox. Laying there on top was a one-armed Wonder Bread He-Man. And I go, oh my God. And that's like when I was first starting out. Like with the shop. So I was like, and I literally, the words, oh my God, came out. 'Cause it's not one of those things you expect to open up in some crappy shoebox and see a Wonder Bread He-Man laying there. I told the guy the whole story of it. I'm like, oh, your price just went up a couple $100. He looks at me and goes, I don't give a shit. My brother keeps stealing my stuff out of my parents' attic, and I just want to get it out of there. I'm like, cool, thanks. I traded that for like, at that point in time, he was selling for like $500. So I traded it for like $500 worth of inventory because I'm like, I'd much rather have a lot more inventory that I can sell because no one's going to come in here and buy a $500 figure.
Yeah.
That was the first one I got. I bought this one from D&E. Like I said, like maybe 7 years ago.
There's no like advertisement with him on Wonder Bread anywhere. Like
there's cards. There was cards that came in Wonder Bread from Master Universe.
I have a hard time believing that he came as part of a Wonder Bread thing. Like if there had been they would have advertised. It would have been on a label or something. You know what I mean? You've seen.
And no one can find anything.
Yeah,
it's like the greatest mystery.
That's bizarre. Yeah. Well, what are the whole?
This is a Bermuda Triangle of toys.
So did the Wonder Bread Association just come because they had cards in there and they just assumed that's what it was? Is that where the assumption came? Because they have no recollection of that? That's so weird.
Yeah, it's like they go.
I have a hard time believing it's from Wonder Bread then. Or, you know what I mean? Or just like maybe it was just, I don't know, the toy company put out another line of that, whatever, and it was misprints or something. I don't know.
It's weird. And then, wait. I'm trying to see what country he was made in. God, my eyes are terrible. I'm wearing glasses. Taiwan. Because they were made in USA, Mexico, Malaysia, and Taiwan. Those are like the 4 known countries of origin that I know of for the figures. So, but D&E got this in. It was crazy. The person sold them. There was this one. This one has wonky legs. He needs a new leg band real bad. It was that one without wonky legs, and then 2 heads.
Just heads.
It was an old guy, and they were in the bottom of a plastic bag, and they dumped the plastic bag out. And Bobby's like, what in the hell? You have 2 Wonder Bread He-Mans and 2 Wonder Bread He-Man heads?
Yeah, like he has.
And the guy was like, Bobby's like, he didn't know what he had. So we just told him, and he was just still absolutely clueless. He goes, I just found him in my basement or whatever it was. But like, I actually went to a shop a couple years ago and bought the dude's Wonder Bread He-Man. I sat on it for like 2 years, and it doubled in price. And then I sold it. Like, it's just, they're just hard to get.
So what are they going for? Ballpark 1,500-ish?
Yeah.
That's the range they're in now?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's in part of it, too, I think it's because the lore of it.
Right.
Like, you don't, no one knows where the hell it came from. It's like finding a UFO in your backyard. Right. Where did this come from? Right. You can't get any answers. And the people you think you can get answers from, you ain't getting them. So
interesting.
But even when I was growing up, I didn't even know it was a thing. I found out when I started collecting toys. And I was just like, I'll never find one of these.
I'm trying to think if there's any other toys that were like, that I just never saw that I always watched. I'm trying to go down like the toy lines here. Like Turtles, I never saw a Technodrome until I was an adult. Like, and it was always something was like you just saw the pictures in the, you know what I mean? There was a lot like that where you just saw the pictures of it in an ad, and it was like, oh, this would be great, and you know what I mean? And one thing that always drove me nuts as a kid, specifically with that Hasbro wrestling line, was you'd get the WWF magazine, right? And you flip through and there'd be ads in there for them, but they would show the figures in there, but the figures they show were the prototypes that were like hand painted over. So you get the actual figure and you're like, oh, this doesn't look like the picture. They look way better in the picture than it did when you actually got it.
Matt Cardona has the Macho Man from the JCPenney's catalog, because Macho Man in that catalog was wearing green trunks. He never got put out in like green trunks. It was just in that.
Yeah.
He tracked down the person who owned it and bought it from them.
That's crazy, yeah.
And he also owns the prototype for the Rhythm and Blues, Greg Valentine, because that was on the back of the card backs, and they canceled the line.
I talked to him about that before. He appeared at Toyhio the one time, and there's a short, if you go to the YouTube channel, whatever, it's on there. I'll throw the link in the description of him talking about how he said Greg the Hammer Valentine wanted to fight him because he was talking about the Rhythm and Blues, like how he's going through all this stuff to get this figure, and he got it. But like in interviews, he would say like, yeah, Greg the Hammer Valentine's not my, it was never anybody's favorite wrestler or whatever. And Greg the Hammer Valentine got all pissed off at him. It's like, well, he's not wrong. Like nobody ever said, oh, who's your favorite wrestler? Oh, Greg the Hammer Valentine. Like no, he was just he was a fine wrestler, but he's just a mid-card dude. You know what I mean? He was never
and now he just looks like an angry lunch lady.
Yeah, and he was only in Rhythm and Blues for a minute because they, I think I just saw a story about this. Yeah, he was in Rhythm and Blues for a minute because they stuck him with the Honky Tonk Man they were
probably
building,
as a punishment.
No, so they were building up Rhythm and Blues to contend for the tag titles, but that was right before WWF signed Legion of Doom. And then once they signed Legion of Doom, they came back and fired Greg the Hammer Valentine, said, oh, we're not doing this anymore. And then Honky Tonk Man was gone not long after that. But yeah, they're like, yeah, we don't need you guys anymore. We got Legion of Doom.
Honky Tonk Man's something.
He's something else, man. He's funny to watch. His videos are funny to watch.
He's like, when I did WrestleCon, they put him away from everybody else because no one wants to be near him.
His old shoot videos, like he's humbled up. Like he's quieted down a lot since he went to the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Like you could tell he's out doing appearances and stuff. But like he used to do all those shoots. He was always the guy that was talking shit at everybody, hanging out with New Jack and everything. But he doesn't do that anymore. Whatever. But he was never like even a drinker or a partier. Even really like everybody was around he'd be sitting there with the Iron Sheik and New Jack, and they'd be drugged up and just hammered and obliterated. He'd still be there talking the same shit, and he's sober.
I'll never forget years ago, I saw him at a local event. It was advertised he was going to wrestle. All he did was give the shake, rattle, and roll.
Yeah.
He didn't even fall down. And I said, my buddy was meeting him. I go, why didn't you fall down for the shake, rattle, and roll? He goes, I only got 9 bumps left in my life. I ain't wasting them here.
That sounds about right. Something you could say. I think Jim Cornette said, like of all the wrestlers, like anybody that got the most out of the least of doing the least, especially once he got to the WWF, because he did a lot more before that, in his run up when he was Wayne Ferris. Remember he was punk rock Wayne Ferris, and
I don't even remember that.
Like he had the bleach blonde hair and but he was. So yeah, he went back and forth as babyface, heel, whatever, and he was something else too. They had him in a luchador mask, I think, before that as well. But he did a lot more physically, whatever.
I called him something stupid like the Mass Honky.
He got to WWF, he's like, screw it, I'm doing these 5 moves, and that's all I'm ever doing. It was like, but I get it, that's all anybody did. Hulk Hogan only did like 3.
Yeah, Hogan did a leg drop,
a back rake, a punch, a kick,
yeah, pretty
a slam. Like, he had like 5. That was it. You know what I mean? Like you got a clothesline.
I'm in the very, very small portion of human beings that growing up hated Hulk Hogan. See, to this day, still don't like Hulk Hogan.
I don't like him now. As a kid, I loved him, but I mean, obviously, the years have gone on. He's not. We just talked about this yesterday on the 3-0 Sports Show. I gave the recap of Hulk Hogan. I don't know if you watched Monday Night Raw.
Oh, I heard.
He got booed out of the building,
and everyone's like, oh, it's because of his political stance. No, it's probably because you're a racist.
Yeah, like all this stuff. Yeah, he had that whole stretch. Yeah, he didn't do himself any favors with all that stuff and just hanging around with all the seediest people. And it's like, and you get to where, and then you start hearing the backstories about what he did when he was in the WWF and some of the shady stuff he was doing, even as far back as then, and you're like, oh, this guy's kind of always been like this. It just hasn't
like
been.
him ratting out Ventura.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I understand why he did that. He was making all the money. He's like, oh, don't unionize because then I'm going to have to give up. I'm making all this dough. But, yeah, he did some shady stuff back then even, too. But it's just all the, like, throughout the years, all these stories have come out, and it's like, okay, like, he had that run where he came back and he wrestled The Rock, right? And that was one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time. It was insane
it was
just
huge.
because
it was two icons.
And the
I think that's what they called it, icon versus icon.
They did, and he had that run there where that was sort of the last really super like big sort of goodwill, and then everything after that it just started to slowly go downhill. All the TNA stuff, and then all the sex tape. Like, oh my god, all the nonsense that came out after that.
What was it? Oh, I think he had like one or two hip surgeries at the time of TNA, to where like that's why he just couldn't wrestle anymore. They just like pretty much wheeled him out on a dolly.
Yeah, and
I just have him do his thing and wheeled him to the back.
I don't know what they thought they were gonna get. I mean, they had their partner with his beer company or whatever, like to do. It's like, all right, just Hulk Hogan with his name, just another celebrity beer. Like, I'm trying to think if there's any like celebrity and or band beers that are actually like good. There's like Iron Maiden does one that's okay. Megadeth had a beer for a minute that was okay. One of them, they all these bands just slap their logo on these random microbrews from wherever the hell they are.
They need money,
and it's just like it's whatever. But yeah, Hulk Hogan and Real American Beer. Somebody bought me one of those for my birthday, and I said this yesterday. It's just Keystone Light in a Hulk Hogan can. It doesn't taste like anything.
When you guys drink that, just remember, it does not turn you into a real American.
Yeah. It does not.
Hogan. I can't stand him. I mean, growing up, I hated Hogan. I loved Warrior, but now I hate Warrior. And I hate Hogan. Because back then, you didn't know how much of scumbags these guys actually were.
I never liked Warrior as a kid, but yeah, Hogan, it was just
I think Warrior had less moves than Hogan.
He did. He was terrible. He was a press slam, shake the ropes, run back and forth. That was
that's like what he had. I don't even remember who else. Growing up, I loved the Rockers.
I loved the Rockers too. Yeah,
loved them.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you on that
too. To this day, I hate Shawn Michaels.
See, I don't really like Shawn Michaels either. I loved him in the Rockers, and I love Marty Jannetty in the Rockers, and then everything after that was just downhill. Yeah. I love the Rockers too. I think the Rockers. They were supposed to get the titles. I think they actually won the titles once, and then they wasn't on TV or whatever, and they took them back off
like
of
a house show.
They won them at like a house show or whatever, and then they were going to put them on TV, and I don't know, they switched the plans, and so they never got
it. Because Marty's an idiot.
Because it was always the Rockers just getting sat on. It was like them versus like the Twin Towers. There was always like these giants. It's like, well, the Rockers are doing a job. Like they're getting killed. Like the same thing. Like I don't know why the hell I like Coco Beware. He never won. You never saw him ever win. It was always him and whoever was coming up. And Coco Beware would just get killed.
That's the thing back then. All right, let's talk about this real fast. Back in the day with the wrestling figures, Hasbro specifically. Why in the world did they give jobbers action figures? Repo Man, Coco.
They did that.
Nails.
Who else? Yeah, Nails. Who else did I have that was just like, why do I
Jannetty
have this?
Had a single one.
Oh yeah, you had the Bushwhackers. Oh, I'm trying to think who else was in that line that was just like, nobody wants this. I think they had an IRS figure. Nobody wanted IRS.
That's the thing. Like you're giving these jobbers and stuff. Virgil
was the king one. Yeah.
Why are you giving these people action figures?
Wasn't there a Skinner action figure too? Yeah. In one of the later lines. That one's probably worth a lot. Yeah.
Only Skinner figure.
Yeah.
And that's why every time I get Hasbro's in, there's a Skinner. It's actually a really good figure for a terrible, stupid gimmick.
Yeah.
I'm always like, why don't they just sign him to a Legends deal to put out a friggin' new Skinner figure?
I don't know what that guy's doing. I saw a YouTube video on him, the backstory of that guy, and where he kind of came from. Like, and I can't remember it right now, but yeah, I just remember that Skinner gimmick was god awful. But yeah, they had a Skinner figure, Ludwig Borga. They did a figure for him. Then nobody wanted it. Some of these
especially when you find out that he was like a Nazi.
Yeah.
Like it's there's certain figures that like when you look back at the Hasbros, you're just like, why?
Well, Tatanka turned into a jobber. He had a figure like that.
He had 2 Hasbros.
Yeah, the Tonka was he never won anything either. He was always just getting squashed by Yokozuna. Or somebody was beating him up. Yeah, they had a Rick Martel, the model figure. It was like, okay, I can see what you did it with Strike Force before then, but they didn't. I don't think they ever had a Strike Force.
They dropped the ball with that because they didn't give him. They had like Mountie had a shock stick.
Yeah,
you put on Undertaker with the coat. Why didn't you give Martel
he didn't have
his arrogance?
Yeah.
I know someone does it now. Someone like 3D prints them or whatever, but like that gimmick was good, but you wasted it.
Yeah.
And that figure came out, and you didn't give him arrogance. Hell, you didn't even give him sunglasses.
Yeah. Did they do any in the Hasbro line? Did they do any wrestling managers?
No.
Yeah, I can't. I'm
they did them for LJNs.
I remember them for LJN, but because I have a Heenan one.
They just started doing them. They started doing them with the retro line. So like they did Mean Gene as the announcer, a pallbearer. They just announced new retro. Oh, they're doing freaking over the top retros.
Oh boy,
they're doing Hogan and they're doing Zeus, or not? Is that his name? In over the top, Zeus.
Over the top, or you mean No Holds Barred?
Oh yeah, No Holds Barred. That's what I meant.
Yeah, we're getting. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No Holds Barred. That's what I meant. So they're doing Hogan's character and they're doing Zeus. They're doing Sensational Sherry, and then she would have been a great one too. Miss Elizabeth. I think those are the 4 that are in the next wave.
Have you seen? There's an LJN figure that's just generic referee out of that line. Have you ever seen that one?
There's 2.
There's 2 referees.
Blue shirt and white shirt.
Are those? I can't imagine they made a lot of those. It's just a generic.
White
referee.
shirt is the most expensive one.
Is it the most expensive out of the whole line of everything?
No, not the whole line, but just out of the referees. Blue shirt's probably, if memory serves me right, blue shirt might be like $30. White shirt might be like $80 to $100 because I think they did way less white shirts than blue shirts. Because I think, if I had to guess, I don't think the referees wore white shirts back then. I think it was only blue, and I think it was a mess up. That's my guess.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I saw it. I was like, they need a referee. I'm like, who would buy the referee? Why does anybody care about the referee?
But they didn't put a referee out for Hasbro's.
They didn't put no.
Oh, that's another thing with Hasbro's
no
too.
No manager. Yeah,
they did a King of the Ring.
Oh yeah,
stupid rare. The one time I was in D&E's basement, they had one. I go, why is that down here? Bobby's like, we don't have any posts or the ropes for it, so we just keep it down here until one day they come in. I'm like, one day they come in.
You're right.
Yeah, I'm like, those things are so hard to find.
Yeah, right.
That ring is like $500.
Yeah, you'd be better off searching in a landfill for the rest of the parts for that, because it's not walking through the door.
Because it's bright yellow, and on the sticker on it is the big King of the Ring sticker. You never see those like ever. I've never had one walk in the door ever. I'd probably eat my own poop if it happened. I've had more Wonder Bread He-Mans walk through the door than I did King of the Ring, and Wonder Bread He-Man's more. But a lot of wrestling talk at the end of this.
Yeah.
Who would have guessed it?
2
wrestling guys.
It always turns into wrestling.
It will always turn into wrestling. All right. I want to thank everyone tuning in and checking us out on our first episode back of the new year. Thanks, BJ, once again for hanging out, and he'll be the co-host for until we randomly insert someone when BJ has to go rock and roll somewhere or go on vacation.
Right.
So thank you everyone tuning in and checking us out. Make sure to check out all the other shows here at Youngstown Studio. Make sure to check out Monsters in the Toy Box, Time Capsule Toys, Toyhio returns October. I keep saying that. February 8th. I can't talk. Your band just announced a show with Local H, didn't they?
Yeah, we're playing with Local H, Turbo Lovers with Local H at January 30th at Jurgles in Warrendale, just outside of Pittsburgh. So,
I love Local H. Go see BJ and his band play Local H. All right, we'll see you guys soon. Peace.